Hello and welcome to Rubbin Minds. My name is Hero Daniels. I am your guest host today. And as usual, Ebuka Obiu Chendu sends his love. Usually I would say it's a beautiful, Sunday afternoon, but today I had quite an incident and I'm not too happy about it. So I moved apartments at the early hours of this morning, and for every junction that we got to, the representatives of the Omonile, for lack of a better word, the Agberos, right? They had to take 1,000 naira, 2,000 naira from the driver of the truck because we had to use their roads, in their words. And we got to the Aja under bridge, and then the particular person in charge stopped the truck, and I just wanted to, intervene because it was my property after all. When I got there, I said, Ogana, with this your big car, your money now 20,000 last song. And after hours and hours of pleading with this particular young man, we agreed for 10,000 naira. This is a price that is totally unregulated. I don't know the value I'm getting for the money I'm paying. Eventually, because I didn't have cash, we had to go to a POS operator. So the POS person swiped 10,000 naira and forgot to add the charges. So she turned to the Agbero guy and said, your money is 2.5 for 10,000 naira. The guy shouted, Shotia, where you understand? And then he was like, you're a criminal. And they started arguing back and forth, and he snatched the POS and took it to their number one, quote and unquote. And then she started crying and was telling the, the senior Agbero, quote and unquote, that, that we paid a huge amount of money to actually buy this money. So it dawned on me that we're caught in this big web of corruption, The POS operators pay money to get money. The queues at the ATM is so long. Banks are not loading the new Naira notes. The queues at the filling stations are so long. And if you want to jump the queue, you have to pay a certain amount of money. If you want to buy fuel in a gallon, you have to pay a certain amount of money. And we are all complaining about the leadership of this country. Yet, the followers are just as bad. It's 20 days to Nigeria's election. This election is going to be a decider for the kind of Nigeria we want moving forward. The big question is, what are the issues that matter in this election? To discuss this with me, I have a policy analyst, Adeniyi Kunu. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Sincere gratitude for inviting me to start with. I think what you got yourself caught up in has to be pushed to the governor of Lagos State, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, because I've raised it as a very important issue on many platforms that I've been, even this afternoon, just returning from a broadcast, and I said that certain things cannot be left unanswered. The ascendancy of, I'm from Lagos, so the ascendancy of touts as representatives of government is strange to me. I didn't come to live here. This is my ancestral home. And because we understand the evolution of the Lagos socio-cultural and political outlook, we are here to advise those that we have given the power to represent us to do the right thing. So Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has to speak to, because they become law unto themselves. There is no validity in what they do. We were not communicated to when they employed them.
Exactly.
And at times, you find it that it's very funny. They put stones on the sides of the road that vehicles which see them as lawless agents actually get pelted. Like last week, I was driving from Mile 2 towards, Alakija, and they broke a bus's glass because the guy felt, why are you stopping me for? This is my private property. So I think that Lagos appears to be in ascension of certain lawlessness that predecessors of Sanwo-Olu worked very hard to prevent from happening. And the escalation of violence in any society happens when you have this nature and kinds of things continue to happen. So 100%. Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, and I must say, we are sorry for what you experienced this morning. So really that is it. So when we talk about that, that's one part of the conversation. The elections are here.
Right.
According to history documented in every society, when elections are near, that is when the government tries as much as possible to do right, so that the power of incumbency could play in favor of the government seeking re-election, And those that do not hold elected office are also able, by their actions and inaction, communicate certain levels of capacity so that they can be voted into office.
Yeah, sorry to interject you.
It's okay, please.
With the point you just mentioned, I'm sure you're very familiar with the crisis in the APC, All Progressive Congress.
Yes, I am.
Some people, some representatives of Ahmed Asiwaju Bola Tinubu has said that the incumbent is trying to make APC less sellable to Nigerians so that they can vote other parties deliberately. Yeah. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I think that he understands the internal workings of the party better than both of us. Being a party chieftain, the APC never existed without the stamp of approval of sanction of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So he understands the internal dynamics. And that position appears to have been consolidated by the governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai, who spoke less than a week ago about the actions of certain persons at the powerhouse called Aso Rock, which appears to be reducing the quality touted by the APC. And when two strong persons in a political party, a former governor, a current governor, and both have access to the current president, then you have to listen to them very carefully. I said before now that when an election is on its eve, the incumbents do everything possible not to make life miserable so that people could begin to countenance it as a party that loves the people. But if you look at what the president has done, no matter what anybody says in support of the president, bad timing, processes are very key. The process of wanting to, for instance, change the Naira, perhaps not telling us why we suddenly start suffering from all the queues and scarcity of petrol, appears to be a product of not understanding the process that you're putting in place. So the process has been messed up. The process of changing the money in 100 days. Let Emefiele that has worked in Switzerland tell us the average duration where any country that has changed its currency has done that. When we talk about currency change, you have to accommodate the population, the number of people. But it's obvious now from what you said that it appears as if indeed, maybe by virtue of their action or inaction, the incumbent doesn't really want Asiwaju Tinubu to have a good game at the polls. It's becoming obvious by today.
Okay, we're going to sample the opinion of the director of YAGA, Africa, joining us all the way from Abuja, Cynthia Mbamalo. Hello, Cynthia. Welcome to the show.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm sure you've been following the conversation, and what issues do you think we should focus on? There's so many things bedeviling us as Nigerians currently: the fuel scarcity, the new Naira note scarcity, and amongst many other issues. What other issues, or what issues do you think we should really be focusing on this election? Do you think it's also a deliberate attempt to sort of get people agitated so that they can declare a state of emergency, as some people might, opine? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think first, all the things we're experiencing now, it all borders on leadership, basically, the quality of leadership. Because if we have good, responsible and responsive leadership, it would also inform the kinds of policies that we see evolving out of government. But for me, if you want to ask me what is the paramount issue we should focus in this election, I think is who would be elected as our leaders. Because if we cannot identify individuals with good leadership qualities who understand responsive leadership, we'll keep circling around these issues. And I'll just look at it from three dimensions. I think the first part, almost every elections, we have issues around fuel scarcity. Towards an election, it's almost like every other issue escalates. So I'm not surprised to see what we're experiencing now. But it's unfortunate which is why I called the Senate around leadership. The first part is the failure of government to understand that leadership or governance itself must be divorced from politics. That when it comes to engagement towards an elections, what should be paramount should be the interest of the people, not politics. And I think what we've seen happening in this couple of days and even towards the election is just that every issue is politicized, and we forget that we need to look at issues from the point of the people. The second part for me is there are several issues to look at in these elections. But if you want to ask one of my top two, I think the first to be security, the second to be economy. And why do these go hand in hand? First, if we have a country where almost every party is bedeviled with one level of insecurity threat or the other, it affects the quality of life, it affects every other sector, and that in itself affects the level of development that any country can achieve. So if we cannot even deal with issues of security boldly, I don't know what else we'll be discussing about. So for me, security is it should be an important issue to be discussed. And the second is economy. And why do I put this hand in hand? Because these two issues are intertwined and they go together. So if you want to think around just the basic hardship that we experience with the forced scarcity or even the scarcity of the naira, this has security implications because it also has a tendency to increase the level of crime. It also has a tendency to put people's lives at risk. And it also has a tendency to affect the quality of life. So at the end of it all, like what I said, why my first point was important, is that when we go towards elections, the government of the day most times forget that when it comes to engagement or governance itself, that governance must be separated from politics. And that the people, the country, ought to exist before, during, and after the elections. And at the moment, what we're seeing is politicizing of every issue. And the thought for me, honestly, is what yes.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a follow-up question. If I'm to be more direct with some of your points, right? You're saying that the government of the day should concentrate on how their policies would affect the people, as opposed to playing politics with this. Now, President Muhammadu Buhari has assured Nigerians that the legacy that he wants to leave is a free and fair election. And some people are of the school of thought that the reason why they're trying to make sure that the new Naira note goes into effect before the election is so that they can curb votes buying. So that in its sense, do you think is politics, or do you think is actually trying to deliver a free and fair election so that some candidates will not have undue advantage over other candidates because they might have stocked up on the old Naira notes somewhere?
Well, the truth is, when it comes to policy decisions, we must also engage it from a point of objectivity and not really from a point of sentiment. So let's play this out. Whether we face out the old Naira note or the new Naira note, the truth is we actually have existing laws that regulate campaign finance and how money politics, or rather how money is used in politics. So honestly, if we really wanted to see a legacy from the president, as a commander-in-chief of the armed forces and the chief executive, he's responsible for the control of respective state institutions with the power under the law to enforce campaign financing rules, number one, to even arrest and prosecute people who breach these laws. So let's not mix apples and tomatoes at this point. I think it's important we understand that yes, we have existing institutions to act. And sometimes we, as Nigerians, we act as if our hands are tied behind our backs, like we don't know what to do. But if we have institutions acting, actually, the only way to curb impunity is to ensure compliance and enforcement of our rules. So that's one point. Yes, we do understand the argument of, perhaps this would help reduce votes buying, but let us also understand that we operate in a system of inequality, meaning that as we still have challenges of access to the Naira notes, that the generality of the public are still the major victims of this policy, meaning that they still have a class of person, because there's no guarantee that a select few in the political class do not have access to the Naira notes and are using it to their own advantage. So there are several theories out there that it could also be a means to limit access to funds for a category of parties or category of interest. So at this point in time, what I said is important to think about governance beyond politics is because for every economic decision, you must identify the several indicators that ensures its full, or rather its effectiveness and efficiency, meaning that you don't take decisions at spontaneous without first understanding its consequence on the populace, which is what we're seeing right now. So a decision is made. A date is fixed for the new Naira note to become operative, but you have situations where citizens are queuing. Those petty traders, the average Nigerian who lives on what he or she earns on a daily basis, who basically does a lot of cash transactions, very little of electronic transactions. Those individuals, at the end of the day, the farmer in the communities, if you think about those who are suffering the brunt of this policy the most, that is the majority of the people. So yes, I could understand the argument, but let's remember that for every argument, there's always a counter-argument out there, which is why I believe that for this engagement first, I do not believe they had sufficient stakeholders engagement. Remember that it's a policy that the Minister of Finance at some point felt like she was also not even informed before the policy was implemented. We operate within a government. There's a system, there's a constitution. People should not act in silos. It's a governance, it's not a one-man or two-person show. Which is why I believe that for every policy decision that must be taken, the people must be at the center of it.
All right. We have very limited time. So very quickly, INEC has reiterated their position that the elections must hold on the 25th of February. Do you think, with all the parameters in place, do you think we are ready for 25th of February?
According to the Constitution, the only thing that will make an election hold is insecurity at the level that disrupts civil peace, basically. And I've not seen that. And we've also said that perhaps this disruption has another reason why it's in place. I've told people that when this news started filtering around that they may not have the elections, I told people, be careful not to protest now. Protest when you go to vote with your decision. Because if you do anything right now, government will have reason to not want the elections to go ahead, because some people have said that some persons have different ideas about how Nigeria should still go. So I think that for me, and according to the rule books that guide INEC and the Constitution, INEC has to hold this election. And if these elections are not held, I tell you, it's going to disrupt a whole lot of things, but we don't need that now. Of course. So this election must hold.
It must hold. I agree with 100%. But finally, with the current situation of things, people are getting to their breaking point. You know, we've seen videos flying around, people fighting in banks, people fighting at the filling stations, just a lot of mini chaos happening.
If we found ourselves in Senate climbs, Emefiele should have resigned, President Muhammadu Buhari should have resigned. Resigned because two key things. He is the one managing the petroleum sector as a substantive Minister of Petroleum Resources. Emefiele is an expert in banking and finance, but he has not advised his superior well. You want to change the money, yes, but you are doing it at a time that is not allowing people's life move on. So I think that in climes where people take responsibility for their action, Emefiele, for instance, and even President Muhammadu Buhari should have been apologizing, but I've not seen such apologies. But anyway, thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your contribution, and thank you so much, Cynthia. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Cynthia.
Thank you.
Welcome back. This is Rubbin Minds. Before we went on the break, we were talking about 2022 elections. What issues should we be focusing on? In the words of Fela Kuti, suffer for head, you know, for earth, enjoy for heaven, right? And it seems like that has been the situation of most Nigerians for the past 2 weeks. They're literally queues for everything. You have to queue to get money, the money that you actually transfer to the bank. You have to queue to get fuel. You have to queue to do everything, literally. 14th of February is a few days away, and even people cannot afford to get money kicks anymore. People cannot afford to buy money flowers. And really, what is happening? Are we mastering the art of suffering? Really? Have Nigerians mastered the art of suffering and smiling? To weigh in on this conversation, I have with me in the studio the project lead Nigeria Youth Futures Fund, Okpe Orinyowo.
Right. Hello, Euro. Good to be here.
Good to have you. Also joining us, I have the spokesperson, PDP New Generation, Somto Onuchukwu. Hello, Somto. And joining us is...
I'm here.
Welcome. Also joining us is the project director, human rights advocates, the project director, Hub NGR, and a human rights advocate, Rinu Odwola.
Hello, thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us. So, really, what is happening? Have we mastered the art of suffering? Are we acclimatizing to the fact that you have to pay almost 2,000 naira to make a withdrawal of 10,000 naira at the POS point? Are we getting used to the fact that we have to bribe some people? Not everybody might have to bribe to jump the queue, and they have to pay a certain amount of money for the fill attendants to put in fill in their gallons, right? What exactly is happening? Are we getting used to this?
Unfortunately, I totally agree with you that it seems like we're getting used to that suffering and smiling like Fela had said. Interestingly, I was listening to what you were saying earlier, and what you've said is literally been the story of Nigeria for the past decade, that rent-seeking behavior where even citizens ourselves were part of the problem, So sometimes, it's been said that the people get the leaders that they deserve, and sometimes the leaders are a reflection of the people. So we've seen instances where government can have, well-intended policy ill-implemented, but the citizens themselves have this predatory. We have this predatory behavior, and it still comes back to, the national question of there being a unity. Everybody seems to, approach issues from the angle of how can I exploit it? How does it benefit me? So it goes back to the fundamental of us, agreeing on what basis are we Nigerian? What are the values that bind us together? And what are the principles that we're upholding as our national values? So I do agree that it seems that, we've mastered that act, of suffering and smiling as the case may be.
I'm going to take it from what you said, that sometimes the citizens, not sometimes, I think most often than not, citizens are a reflection of their leaders, because if we have a strong government that obeys and entrusts the rule of law, what happens is there are consequences for certain actions. So by the time a certain leader is going to jail or is having, sort of resigns because of some sort of crisis and shows that commitment to leadership, you see that the followers will fall in place. By the time we see that the leaders are accountable, you see that the followers will become accountable because they know that the law will catch up with them. But the problem is, I feel like Nigerians know that so long as you have money in this country, you can circumvent the law. And that's the fundamental problem. Now we have 3 or 4 major runners, right? I don't want to say 3. I'd also want to say 4.
Right.
The PDP, APC, LP, and the NNPP, to the best of my knowledge. Do you think any of these candidates might just be the Messiah? Before I move on to the spokesperson of PDP, obviously, I know the person he's supporting, and I also personally think that Renu is supporting Labour Party as she has done on Twitter and in public, right? So do you think, who do you think might just be the Messiah that we're all clamoring for?
Right. So let me first say that in view of my position, I'm going to vote in the elections, but I'm going to be apolitical for the purpose of this conversation. I think my interest is really about the issues and what each of the candidates represent. And what we've tried to do over the electioneering period is to advocate, especially to the young population and even the entire country, is that let us make this election issue-based. What are the positions that each of these candidates have represented, and let us go to the polls with our conscience in terms of making it issue-based. What do they stand for as far as employment, as far as security? Who is putting together or putting for the best of ideas? So I would say that those are the important issues, and I would also want to emphasize that irrespective of whoever emerges, right, voting is not an action in itself, it's a process, right? We must continue to hold them accountable, and absolute power and power in itself corrupts. So irrespective of if any of those 4 candidates that you've mentioned emerges, we must continue to ensure that we're holding them accountable and we're also part of the process. So it's important that we have that backdrop. But let me also add that I just came in from Abuja, and I was in an event where there was supposed to be a presidential youth peace accord. Young people, young organizations came together, for presidential candidates and political parties to sign an agreement. And I had gone the same approach of mentioning 4 parties, and they had the SDP presidential candidate in the room, and he took it very seriously to say that, we should not always, we young people, we're always staying with this 4 mainstream. We should go with all these other options or parties. So I don't want to make the same mistake and say, okay, look at all the candidates in terms of the spectrum of what they represent. We need to address these issues from a very critical, analytical point of view, right? We have an 8 years experience to measure against, of a political party. We also have the position of the presidential candidates of those parties, likewise all of. So we need to dissect issues from an issue-based position. And I think that it's unfortunate that, sometimes our diversity doesn't play to our advantage. For a heterogeneous society like ours, it has always been a pattern where elections have been along ethnic lines, along religious lines. That's why issues like Muslim ticket will continue to, play a significant role. And it's unfortunate to note that going into the 2023 elections, these issues will still be important, right? People are still going to vote along those lines. However, for someone like me who is a development practitioner and who understands that democracy is a process and we're a young democracy, is that I'm looking to see that there is an emergence of a critical mass that spreads across the country. The 80-20 principle that, would require a critical mass of 20% of the people to convince the doubting Thomas that change would eventually come. So for me, it's really about watching, I will make my decision based on what I think is best and represents the interest of young people in Nigeria, because that's our own position, especially, the aspirations of what we are seeing young people want. Security, I think the previous speaker talked about security, economy, all of these issues. Employment, Nigeria has literally doubled our poverty rates. We have about 26 million people, more people who are in poverty. So these issues will continue to be important, and I think decision making will ultimately be based on who represents our interest the most.
Okay, speaking about representing our interest the most, I'm going to quickly speak to Somto. We've had 16 years of PDP, 8 years of your candidate as vice president. Can Atiku deliver?
Thank you. The question is very important. I believe Atiku and PDP can deliver on their promises to recover Nigeria. The reason is simple. For this election, you started the conversation by asking what is the election about for each of us. This election for me is about economy, security, and under economy, there is unemployment and inflation. So I'm going to analyze the two administrations, the 16 years of PDP and 8 years of APC. During the PDP administration, Nigeria was on a path of growth. Some people can argue that the path was slow, but there was growth. We recorded our highest GDP growth in 2002, and that was when Alhaji Atiku Abubakar was the vice president and head of National Economic Council. We recorded that growth plus 15%. Meanwhile, under these 8 years of APC, we have witnessed 2 recessions, negative growth, 2 recessions. Then we talk about inflation. The PDP maintained a single-digit inflation for 16 years. The APC took it to over, in fact, we don't even know what it is now, it's over 30%. Unemployment, it was at 11%, now it's 33%. So there is a problem. On insecurity, the PDP was managing insecurity in one region, the Northeast. Under the APC, it has spread across all regions of Nigeria. There is agitations, there is terrorism. In the Southeast, I'm from Anambra. I can no longer go back to my place to celebrate. We now do our celebrations in the city because you may not survive it. In the North Central, in the Southwest, even just yesterday, we had the killing in Katsina, Northwest. We had the killing in Katsina. Bandits attacked over there. So there has been a series of issues under the 8 years of APC. My brother in the Lagos studio, he said we've been facing stuff in the past 2 weeks. It's not just in the past 2 weeks. In the past 8 years has been excruciating for Nigerians. We have suffered so much. We have been through a lot. Let me start even from, is it the handling of the COVID crisis or the Lassa fever crisis? Don't forget that we had Ebola under PDP. And the international community commended Nigeria for the way they handled Ebola. Just a few years later, 2018, under the APC, Lassa fever came and killed almost 100 people. Lassa fever, and it has a cure. When Ebola came, it did not have a cure. So it's about leadership. Okay. It's about leadership.
All right, Somto.
The APC has failed in all ramifications.
It's very interesting because the APC got the mandates because people were tired of the PDP and the level of governance at that point in time, and that was how power shifted to the APC. Now, we have new front runners, not new political parties, but certain political parties that have been at the backdrop or at the back end have now sort of emerged to be front runners. Reno, you're supporting Peter Obi of the Labour Party. Why?
I know that this was a partisan conversation. However, why am I supporting Peter Obi? I'm supporting him because as a young person, I'll be voting on the issues that matter most to me. You know, and that's what voting is all about, you know, vote for the issues that matter most to you, especially social issues, and the person that is capable to address those issues when it comes to education, when it comes to jobs, when it comes to innovation, technology, human rights, women's rights, the ability to understand global trends, quality healthcare, security, amongst others. Those are the issues that are most important to me, because I'm not a party person. But then if Nigerians look critically at the candidates that we have now, you realize who is the best option among others. And Peter Obi is more than capable, looking from three angles. And you've asked us those questions. Let's look at three reasons. One, the past. His Excellency Peter Obi has proven to be more capable in the educational sector, in fiscal management, in health sector transformation, economic investment, international investment. I can go on, and this is why we say, go and verify. The records are there. Two, the present. The past 8 years of our lives have been immersed in worse governance. Even when we look beyond that, you know, right back to the time where we started our democratic era, where you were asking the spokesperson from the PDP, it has been immersed in worse governance. We can't even refer to it as bad. You have economic stability, just like I said. More than 60% of young people do not have a job. The brain drain, worsening insecurity. In 2015, Buhari promised an exchange rate of 1 naira to $1. Today, we have naira to dollar over 500 naira.
Okay.
There's no fuel in a country that produces crude oil. Please let me learn. Exacerbated corruption. I can go on and more. Also, the country systems, educationally, financially, I can go on and on, is in an appalling condition. Right. We cannot continue like this. Nigerians cannot afford to reward failure.
No, I'm not trying to cut you short.
Let us look at the future.
Yeah, I'm not trying to cut you short.
Let us look at the future. Look at the people contesting. Look at the people contesting. How many of them are actually concerned about the future of young people? I'll end there. Thank you.
Okay, Reno, thank you very much. I was not trying to cut you short. I just want to make sure that the viewership is just enjoyable for everybody in terms of, you know, your image, right? So I'm going to quickly get back to you before I go to the PDP spokesperson. To be honest, it seems like when Nigerians get tired of a particular party, right, we move over to the next party. And one of the biggest fear for the emergence of, let's say, an NNPP or an LP is how governable it will be for those candidates, in the sense that if you look at, because, well, everybody's concentrating on the presidency. We have the House of Reps, we have governors, we have there are other elected positions. So, peradventure, right, a candidate from either of these two parties or any of other parties, because we're not trying to sideline the other parties that are involved. Peradventure, a candidate emerges that is not PDP or APC. How well do you think they can sort of synchronize the government, in the sense that most of the elected positions might not necessarily be from those parties?
Right. Thank you very much. And I think I want to start by saying that it is important, or I would like to disabuse our mind, especially as young voters going into the polls, about not even being rooted in political party structure, to say APC, PDP. Because ultimately, if we look at recent democracy and all that, it's a conflagration. You know, it's the same people moving around. Even Peter Obi has moved from PDP to APC. The APC itself has components of a G5 or a G7 who moved from PDP then to form APC and form mergers. What we are seeing right now is elite consensus. The elite of this country has continuously hold this country to the jugular. We must identify this and understand right now that we must have a clear path. What represents the interest? What kind of Nigeria do we want in the next 10 years, in the next 20 years? What represents our collective aspiration? Can we have an elite consensus around it, which comes to the winner takes all mentality? Until the elite of this country come into the agreement that this is our path forward that we agree with. America, the United Kingdom, even China, they have a 50-year master plan, a 60-year master plan. It doesn't matter what party comes in or what kind of government they are running, but there is an agreement on who we are as a nation and where we want to be in 50 years, in 100 years, or in the immediate 30 years. And you mentioned representation at the local level. We need to, which comes back to the question of devaluation, comes back to the question of restructuring. I beg your pardon, in terms of how do we want to govern ourselves? You know, so I think that a lot of issues come to play in terms of determining these names. I won't be surprised in 2027, another name will come up, LSDPC, and just some people just pack themselves inside and they say that this is what they represent. So let us move beyond that prism of political party for starters, address issues, come together with a clear agenda. One of the things that we have tried to do is, last year we went across the country doing active listening to the voices of young people to say that what kind of Nigeria do you want to see in 50 years? What kind of Nigeria do you want to see in 20 years? Let us, you know, root these conversations in an agenda and align. So irrespective of who emerges, PDP, APC, Labour Party, you know, we can all, you know, and it's important that they also begin to build that bridge, because the people in PDP and APC are required to move this country forward.
And I think the right person to sort of also direct that question to is Renu. Renu, what are your thoughts on this? Should Peter Obi emerge president?
Yes,
unmute, please. Unmute, please.
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you now. I think that Peter Obi has done it before and he can do it again. When we talk about the issues of the fact that politicians are in one party or the other, just like Okpe said, the issue here is about our country and our country moving forward. It's a given incident to occur in Nigeria elections where politicians move from one party to the other. Haven't we seen governors and politicians who won on the platform of one party and they come to another? We always experience this when we have non-ideological parties and people who are only acting in their own self-interest, people who are serving themselves and their friends, stealing their own share of the national cake, there to kill, to steal, and destroy. However, like I said, Peter Obi has done it before, and until with other parties, you know, when he was governor in Anambra State, and until our political party structures are reorganized around ideologies and democratic principles that are for the people, by the people, and of the people, where leaders who steal the Commonwealth are punished regardless of what party they are in, where we shun the ideology of join our party and all your crimes shall be forgiven. We all know the kind of parties that have constantly re-echoed this. Then we always have this issue of, can political parties not join one party or the other, or can politicians not join one party or the other? However, like I said, Peter Obi has joined it before, and he has asked you and I that the current matter that is on ground right now is our country and our nation, and it's moving forward. The fact that our country is in a state of moral, psychological, financial, physiological crisis. Can go on and on about the issues that are happening. But then the current state is which politician, which leader, which candidate that is currently contesting will create a better future for you and I. And I guess we all know that answer by now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Renu. Some people believe that Atiku is part of the old crop of politicians and might not be able to deliver on his promises because he's part of, you know, the old crop. What do you say to that?
Thank you. Before I say anything about that, I want to chip in a little bit on the political party and individual thing. You know, Nigeria is a very big country. Some states in Nigeria are actually bigger than some countries across the world. You know, even in population and size. You know, and so because of that, devolution of power, restructuring is the only way to fix Nigeria. No one man can sit in Aso Rock and change things effectively. You cannot be in Abuja and understand what is going on in Anambra perfectly well than the person living in Anambra. This is why I agree with my brother in the studio when he says restructuring and devolution of powers. That is a very important. In fact, at this point, I believe Nigeria has nowhere else to go. APC has brought us to a halt. We have nowhere else to go but to restructure and devolve power. And that brings us to the question of who can restructure, who can devolve power.
Why do you think Atiku can restructure? Parties. And I'm sorry to sort of...
No one person, no one president can restructure.
Because this we've been having this conversation.
There's a legislature size.
We've been having this conversation for a very long time.
You know, and you have to have members there.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Be able to effect restructuring. So it's not something you just do on your own. Oh, thank you. It's not something you do on your own. You understand? So we are thinking of, so political parties play a role in governance, a big role. Let's take it back to the Obasanjo regime. When President Obasanjo wanted to seek for third tenure, it was PDP that stopped him, his fellow party men. Jonathan's biggest opposition was inside the party as well. But the guys in power right now seems that like they swore an oath of silence while Nigerians were suffering for the past 8 years. And now there is naira scarcity, they are all shouting. It makes the whole clamor for protest suspicious. Because where were they when students stayed at home for 1 year? Where were they when they blocked the borders and caused untold inflation? Where was the protest when they put FS rules that did not allow us to pay school fees for our children abroad? Where was this agitation where people could not even use their cards anywhere? It wasn't there. But now everybody, most of them are in the APC now. The ones, I don't know what they are linked between Naira notes and election. I think it's about vote buying. So what primary. I'm not saying that the Naira policy was well thought out. Do you understand? Okay. Because the planning and everything was not done well. That's the hallmark of APC. They don't always
just to interrupt you there.
When the PDP administration removed subsidy, there were several town hall meetings.
Okay, I want us to stay on course. I want us to stay on course.
Atiku can do it.
I want to stay on course for this conversation because we're looking at this point in time, I think everybody's really tired of the blame game. Okay, APC says it's PDP, PDP says it's APC. I'm just saying, what is the guarantee the Nigerians have that when Atiku gets into power, he will restructure Nigeria? You just said it that no one man has the power to restructure Nigeria. And you're also saying that Atiku will restructure Nigeria. So tell me, what is the guarantee that he will be able to do that?
He can. Because he has never said, I will restructure. He said, I think if you watch Atiku's statement, he has always said, I and my party will recover Nigeria, will fix Nigeria. He understands that it's a collective process. It's not something that one person can do. He understands it. If you read the covenant, his manifesto, you will see that he broke it down in stages. There is a legislative stage, you know, and then before that, there is one he can do with the executive powers that he has. That was why a few days ago he said in the first 6 months of his presidency, if elected, he would have achieved 80% of restructuring of Nigeria. So these are things we have to take seriously. Restructuring is a key topic for 2003 elections.
Thank you very much. So we've seen the emergence of Labour Party. Initially, they said Labour Party, they do not have structure. They do not have a structure, and now it is no longer about structure. We've seen that they have had some mega rallies in different states. But does the Labour Party need to do more? Are they there yet? Renu?
Oh, sorry, again, I was muted. I think that you were asking the question of the structure that we've always asked. For me, I think that when we ask if Labour Party have the structures, comparing to the fact that we've seen them on the street of Nigeria today, we'll see that the structures that have always been defined, we'll probably say the political traditional structures, which are the structures of criminality, the structures of weaponization of poverty, the structure of the politics of MMM, the politics of Ankara and rise to 5,000 on top, the politics of thuggery and causing chaos during elections, the patronage system and vote buying structures along religious and ethnic lines, the structures that have failed to move our lives forward, only backward, the structures that have kept us complaining years after years, president after president, leader after leader, and just like you said, that have kept the barrage of complaints and finger pointing back and forth from APC to PDP. No, Peter Obi doesn't have that. But if we're talking about social structure, through grassroots networks, trade unions, market association, cooperative, yes, he has that. And also, there is a new demographic of new voters who will undoubtedly pose a challenge to the old structures and create a shift. Just like Peter Obi will say, the people are truly the structure. However, if suffering cannot detach the people from the oppressors, then it's our fate. Do I think that Peter Obi can win? Only Nigerians can stop Peter Obi from winning the 2023 elections. It's up to Nigerians who must understand that we cannot reward failure again. I mean, you were asking one other speaker the other time regarding the fuel queues and the Naira queues and all of that. The fact that Nigerians cannot even withdraw their own money again. So will the people who want good governance prevail? Or will we discover that many Nigerians just choose bad governance themselves? The 2023 elections will provide evidence of our own role. whether we are victims or accomplices, because who we elect affects whether we have jobs or not, whether we have good roads, whether we have hospitals or not. It has serious consequences. Who you elect will determine whether you spend the next 4 years in darkness, hustling for petrol to fuel your generator. So, I mean, it's up to Nigerians. Only Nigerians can stop Peter Obi from winning the 2023 elections. That's why the so-called structures that have been called so far.
Thank you very much, Reno. Okbe, it's 20 days. It's literally 20 days. What should we expect?
I mean, let me first start by saying that I find what Peter Obi has done to be quite inspirational within a short period of time. And I think that his candidacy and what the Labour Party is doing right now portends hope for even the concept of independent candidacy, and the fact that somebody can emerge and have a cross-cutting appeal across the country. I think is very good for our democracy. And I think such movements should be encouraged by every means. And I definitely want the best man to win. But ultimately, most importantly, my concern is really around, in respect of who emerges, are we able to form a government of national unity? Are we able to, agree to the polls that reflects a result that might not necessarily be our candidates, and be able to drop those negative energies we have around each other? The elections are so heated up that it fans the embers of division, and there's no country that can move forward without a certain level of understanding of our commonness, that we have more alike. So even if a party or a presidential candidate has a simple majority or has a total majority and declares, there's going to be a significant number, millions of Nigerians who did not vote for him. And if they do not agree or align that this next 4 years, can we give this person a chance to govern in the interest of all of us, we're going to have a problem.
Right.
So ultimately, irrespective of the popular appeal, there's going to be people on the other side. And it's really about building bridges. So for me as a person, and for us, I believe that our eyes is set on how do we come together as a country to move this nation forward and continuously vote, whoever emerges at the end of the day. Are we able to heal our wounds and our differences and come together and see how well we want to support this person to take us to see how well they govern over the next 4 years before we have a referendum on them? So two things are important for me going into these elections. I want to see how well we have matured as a country in terms of our ability to organize around the candidacy and what we represent across the country, cross-cutting appeal. And I think young people have that potential. And I'm looking forward to see how that happens. The second one right now is what I spoke about in terms of, can we as voters going into the polls, we must go with a sense of patriotism, a sense of unity to accept whatever the outcome, even if it's not to our will. And it is also the responsibility for whoever emerges in terms of a political candidate to start to have plans around healing this country, because this country needs healing. That would be my closing remark.
And that is really profound. We've drawn the lines, and we've drawn the lines so deep amongst ethnicity and religion, even down to the candidate. On Twitter, if
it's a warfare,
it's a war. It's PDP versus LP versus APC. Reno, how can we all come together? Because at the end of the day, it's one Nigeria, it's one people. We're one people. How can we come together, Reno?
Well, just like you said, right, it's one Nigeria, we're one people. I was telling someone on an interview about what I think the question was, what if the people that you want to win do not win? And Okwe has answered it all, that it's all about, our country first. We have to put our country first regardless of everything. I think that the most important thing for me, it's not actually about politicians, but then putting Nigeria on the right track, leaders who can address the high unemployment rate, worsening poverty. You and I know what the problems that we have in today. And so whoever wins the election on February 25, we have a lot of issues to grapple with. And so the new president must make reforms in every sector a priority, with a special focus on the security sector, civil service sectors, work on investments in health, in electricity, in agriculture, in education, and a lot of other things that are going on. It is possible to have a working country. It is possible to be among the Committee of Nations for Progress, instead of being constantly in the news for a third world corrupt country. So we can have a sane nation. And so Nigerians, if you haven't gotten your PVC, there's still a few hours to go. Please go and get your PVC and vote in the right people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Renu. That was very, very sound. Somto, final words. Your candidate has quite an experience.
Yeah, thank you.
8 years. And so what is your closing remark, and how do you think we can all come together, irrespective of the fact that we are divided amongst different lines? How can we come together?
I'll start my closing remarks by saying the blame game, or what you call the blame game, is necessary, because election is a referendum on the incumbent. Nigerians should at this point compare how they fared before 2015 to how they fared from 2015 to 2023. So this is what election is about. If you feel the PDP did better and the APC did worse, of course you go with the PDP. If you feel the APC did better, you can stay with them. But we all know the answer to that. That said, only one candidate, or your issue, or your question about uniting everybody, only one candidate has promised to run a government of national unity, and that's Atiku Abubakar. Only one candidate has the experience of running a government of national unity. What is a government of national unity? Atiku is promising that when he wins, he's going to bring all the political parties together, like they did under Obasanjo.
Okay.
They did it under Obasanjo when he was vice president.
Thank you very much.
So there's experience here. There's experience in uniting Nigeria. There's experience in speaking diversity, which is what Nigerian language should be.
All right,
Nigeria.
Somto, we're out of time.
Diversity to ourselves. We must be able to unite.
Thank you so much for joining us, and I really admire your passion. Well done. Okay, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you, Okbe, and also I appreciate you, Reno. We've had such an amazing conversation right here on Rubbin Minds. Please do join us next week, same time, same station. My name is Hero Daniels. Bye for